The importance of human rights here is pretty multifaceted. There can be a perception here that because we've enjoyed relative peace for a long period of time, that everything is somehow sorted, but that's far from the case.
There is a shared interest in making this place work, making human rights central to the governance of Northern Ireland, fulfilling the promises of the peace process of the Good Friday Agreement. And there were core commitments in the Good Friday Agreement to human rights and equality provisions. Central to that was the idea and the vision of a Bill of Rights, and that's one of our core campaigns, but also additional protections like the European Convention on Human Rights, which was given expression legally in the Human Rights Act in 1998. And a lot of our work is focused around protecting those commitments, but also working towards their delivery.
One of the key challenges for us is the ongoing, attack on human rights. We're seeing a political atmosphere grow where human rights are becoming even more contested, even whilst they are relied on by, say, factions of the far right in order to sustain their activity. But we are entering a bit of a conservative phase. It feels maybe a bit of a backlash against our own advocacy of rights. And that is going to play out, particularly where we're taking legal action.
It's really vital that we have independent sources of funding, especially for organisations doing human rights work, because so much of the work that we do, we're calling to account particularly public bodies. So we're particularly saying, you need to take steps to make these rights real for people. If you don't have a source of independent funding, if it's not unrestricted funding that lets you be flexible, be agile, and respond to the problems, that creates a real difficulty. So I suppose the beauty of the Human Rights Fund is that it enables you to do those things.
So when we look at climate justice, when we look at earth rights, when we look at human rights, we only can achieve our goals if we work with other organisations. And that's the beauty, and that's the beauty of the Human Rights Fund, and that's what we're going to do.
The Human Rights Fund is giving us an opportunity to connect different campaigns together. So human rights is for everybody, and it's about learning what human rights means here and the different groups, and making those links together so that we can all stand together and call for rights, because human rights are for every single one of us.
Well, the Human Rights Fund is going to assist us in terms of 3 specific areas of work we have already been doing, but without very much support in terms of funding. And we have been working we continuously working in terms of special education needs, in trying to support children to get the access to the services that they need. In terms of children with disabilities and mental health issues, we've recently engaged in a campaign with the National Autistic Society to gain support for their access to respite services. And the other area that we're actually working on, and have been doing so for a couple of years now, is working with refugee and asylum seeking children who have come into Northern Ireland or are placed in contingency or dispersed accommodation without the knowledge of the services that the children have access to in terms of education, health, and we've worked directly with families to ensure that their children get those services.
In our education project, actually, we help those ladies to find school places, to communicate with the schools, with the education authority, to understand about their children's rights of education. We support them with information sessions to understand the system, to understand their rights in this country. And we also work with the 16 plus because there is a big issue of education gap for this age group. So we work with a big group of 16 to 24 to advocate for themselves and for their education rights.
There's a real range of challenges that we're facing. So I suppose one of the key things is around particularly housing and homelessness. We really need to see a big shift in political will to start addressing that particular situation. Otherwise, we're going to basically end up with over 50,000 households on the waiting list, and that's going to be a really huge problem for people. So we would have a lot of people living in temporary accommodation, maybe not connected to their kind of networks and schools and jobs, not able actually to play a part in society. So that's a big problem. Another kind of enormous problem that we have is around particularly far-right actors. So a lot of the work that we would do, we support people who've come here seeking asylum or people who get refugee status. And those people are currently experiencing like a huge wave of violence, attacks, name-calling, not being made welcome in Northern Ireland. And that's a really significant problem that we're seeing really across the piece, but especially here in Belfast and in particular parts of Belfast as well. So if you look in particularly South Belfast, there's lots and lots of concentrated attacks on people, and that's something that we really need to get a hold of, basically.
The hope and optimism we have is that we still live in a society where the reality is the majority of people are quite aggressive. They don't scapegoat others for societal ills. And it's about having a vibrant civil society that can actually harness that energy and turn it into meaningful and actual impact, and can turn it into what we finally hope will be the full implementation of the rights-based provisions of the peace settlement, which were there very much for a reason. And the lack of implementation of things like a Bill of Rights to sort of constrain abuses of executive and legislative power is something that we feel these days on. The issue is, as time goes on, obstructing that framework is becoming less tenable. What we need, and what I have optimism for, is that we have a vibrant civil society that can drive some of those issues forward.